The contents of this interview, or from Awake and Empowered Expo LLC from Ethann Fox and Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the viewpoints held by these organizations or individuals. Always consult with your doctor or health professional before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or prescription drug use. Please understand that you assume all responsibility and risk for the use or misuse of this information.
Hello and welcome to Awake and Empowered Radio. I am Jeffery Jaxen. With me is Ethann Fox, and today we're both delighted to interview Scott Stevens. Scott Stevens is a meteorologist, a whistleblower, and an authority on geoengineering and chemtrails. His website is weatherwars.info. Scott, how are you doing today?
I am good this afternoon. How are you guys?
Hey, doing good. I wanted to start out with your background. The history of how you became a meteorologist, perhaps, first of all, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. The weather and the sky are something that I kind of figured I was interested in because from the time I was maybe 6, 7, 8, I was building model airplanes. And then Dad introduced me to the winter night sky when we were living in New Mexico when I was 8. And so Dad was important in kind of directing me skyward when I was younger. And they bought me a telescope for Christmas when I was 12. And then it was the summer that I was 12 years old that I was flipping through the Boy Scout Merit Badge book and came across the Weather Merit Badge. And that was kind of my hook into meteorology, was the Boy Scouts. So I had 30 days. I had to watch the news. I had to build weather instruments, and I had to keep a log. And as they say, it takes 21 days of doing something regularly to create a habit. Well, this was a 30-day assignment. So the habit was formed, and it was something I was fascinated with and just kind of resonated with me. And so that's why I'm deep into weather. I was probably determined to do that as a kid, but then the Boy Scouts put me on that path at that age.
Could you talk about your schooling as far as college?
Yeah. Even though I was kind of mentored by a meteorologist at a TV station pretty much all the way through high school, I wasn't positive that this is what I wanted to do. I had this huge interest in economics and business. And so it was even through my first year of college, I wasn't certain that I was going to do weather. So I kind of did prep classes. And by that second semester, my freshman year, I signed up for the first meteorology class. And once I did that, I'm like, okay, this is where I got to be. I got to do weather. I have to do weather. So I was a junior at University of Kansas and got a holler from an ABC station in Topeka to audition. And I didn't get the job, but 3 months later, they called back and said, well, the person we had hired for that job didn't work out, and we liked what you did and thought you had the potential to learn. And so they brought me back over and they got me started. So I was just 21.
Wow.
21 and in school and doing weather. So that set me into TV.
And how long, well, here's the $1 million question. So what took you from being a meteorologist on TV to geoengineering? How did you make that leap?
Well, I have this kind of perfection part of me that when I'm doing something, I want to do it right. And the thing that I find a little abhorrent is having to get up in front of an audience that has chosen to watch me and apologize or make excuses for why a forecast was wrong. Mm-hmm. And that was happening more and more frequently. And so I began this look for there's something that I'm missing. There's something the guys in DC aren't getting. There's something to give all these weathermen across the country, in fact, across the planet, this bad reputation of being wrong half the time. And I didn't like that. and so I was always alternative media, so I was very curious in what was going on behind the scenes and what wasn't presented to people. And that led me into geoengineering. I was deep into alternative energy from the vacuum, zero-point energy, magnetic motors, those kind of things. And on a particular website of Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, there was a sidebar. It was called Soviet Weather Engineering, and that fascinated me. There are pictures on that website that I soon were able to duplicate or see in my skies, and then I began to document. And this was 2002. And by 2004, I had seen enough evidence, I had read enough material that I was convinced I'd had my aha moment about the scale that the geoengineering was happening on this planet. And that changed how I let's just say that changed my relationship with my audience, because immediately at that point, there were wide swaths of my understanding about weather and how weather works that I wasn't able to share. I couldn't present to my people why this was happening, why this might not happen. I couldn't do that. And I found that way too restrictive.
And that speaks to your integrity. Now, your website, weatherwars.info, is that still correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's a testament to your perfection, because there is a lot of information on there, from satellite imagery to just gallery of the still images, all types of things for people to see visual evidence of this. I think is very important for the people that are the left brainers out there.
Yeah, and I come from a left brain aspect as well. That's the part of me that kind of drives or has driven the TV side. But then there's the creative, there's the artist, there's the photographer side. And so in my videos, which is kind of where I've directed most of my energies for the last 2 years, I try to bring those two together. I can write, and I don't mind writing, but I'm so much better with a microphone. Let's talk and describe what's going on in the sky. You know, that's something that's impossible to do with just a keyboard.
Did you experience, while you're at the TV station, did you experience any behind the scenes, because I hear rumors about this, behind the scenes of perhaps don't talk about the weather anomalies, or if you see something strange, when it's not our job to report on that?
Absolutely. I mean, you're pulled into the general manager's office, and he asks you to keep this on my own time. That he was fine with me, sharing this and doing my interviews and talking about this, but it must be on my own time and not while I'm at the station and not on their air, which, I begrudgingly agreed to, and that let me know that I was going to be looking for work. I was going to be doing something else, because I felt so strongly about this that you can't separate the two. You can't have knowledge of this and not share it with your audience who trusts you. Leverage that trust, leverage that information, and teach them. And that was really what I wanted to do, was to teach them. And so that was, for me, the big loss, is not being able to teach an audience that had watched me for 10 straight years.
Now, the first time I saw you was on Michael J. Murphy's film. Was that your first? Was that your first kind of launch pad into the geoengineering scene, or did you do a lot of work before that?
Oh, much before.
Okay.
I mean, the reason I'm not on television anymore is because I had done CNN with Lou Dobbs. I'd done Closing Bell with Marita Bartiromo on CNBC. That I'd done the BBC, that I'd done Coast to Coast. I'd done all of these alternative interviews when I first, quote unquote, came out of this in October of 2004. And I've been very vocal since. I was glad that Michael Murphy kind of picked up the ball in 2008, 9, and 10, because I had kind of run with it for 4 years. And to be honest with you, I was done. I'm like, if people can't see this, if they don't care about their own planet, then, why should I? Why should I continue to give what I've got if it isn't going to be received on the other end, with a little gratitude? And, so I backed off, and I was just kind of glad Michael, picked up the ball and was able to, advance the movement forward, and great kudos to him for that work. And anybody else, because, I've got information. I'm just not the best, video editor or one that feels like doing this thing from sunrise to sundown. I'm 10 years in. There's got to be some young blood to help out.
Yeah, you were the tip of the spear, so to speak, and one of them, I should say. And I see the internet as bringing those people together. Maybe before it was hard to see what kind of impact you were having, but now there's a lot of information out there.
There is, and it almost becomes like the baker who comes in the morning, preps his workstation, gets the dough going, and then he walks away for a bit while the bread rises. So then the meal is ready to be disseminated or given to the audience. And I think that's really where global consciousness is it's moving very, very quickly. And we'll be ready for this before a whole lot longer.
Man, that's a great analogy. Good stuff. Well, Michael J. Murphy's coming to the Awake and Empowered Expo, and this is the broadcast we do is all about affecting global consciousness. And in fact, we are getting him to speak at some colleges in Michigan. We're in talks with Michigan State, Oakland University, University of Michigan to speak to the students about geoengineering and to educate them, which I don't know if that's been done before. So that's also a testament to some of the work you've laid the groundwork for.
Yeah. It's important to do those kind of things. I've done some college speaking. I did University of Iowa and Ames, back in '06. But there's so many of us out there that are now doing this, and we all have our own angle that we're coming to this story from. Whether it's solar radiation management, whether it's meteorology, whether it's farm and how this is changing the productivity of the agricultural assets of this country, whether it's dealing with biosystem and forest collapse because we're not getting the cold winters and the pine beetle kill is exploding. I mean, there's so many ways that this is impacting humanity that we could have a table with 100 specialists, and very little of our specialties would be overlapping. This issue is that broad.
That leads me to a question. What if any specialized area does this information take off the fastest? Would it be people in the agricultural community that see it on the ground, the biosystems, forest collapse, or would it be the the alternative community, like the alternative talk radio? Is there someone that just latches onto this stuff and really gets it and is taking it home?
Oh, it's the conspiracy people. They're the ones that bring it up first, and that's where I came across the information, first as well, was the work that those foot soldiers had done in the late '90s. Because in the late '90s, I'd seen the word chemtrail maybe once or twice, but I looked at it with a little not quite disdain, but a little annoyance, because I figured these people just didn't know what created contrails. Mm-hmm. And it took 5-6 years of investigation and photography and time-lapse photography, and to kind of figure it all out.
Now, listening to you, if someone's listening to you for the first time, they know you and they've heard Michael J. Murphy's name. Are there any other names that are on your radar as far as really leaders right now that are carrying the ball, so to speak?
Well, kind of like we referenced, there's so many people, but we're coming at this from different angles. Dane Whittington is coming at it from solar radiation management. His issue when he was in mainstream was with Bechtel, but in methane capture. And we all know methane is an incredibly potent greenhouse gas, one that exceeds carbon dioxide by a multitude of orders. It's just huge. And so his interest is in methane capture. And more recently, ultraviolet C radiation. That we're seeing changes in the sun, we're seeing changes in atmospheric chemistry, and if we're getting so many of these particulates artificially introduced into the atmosphere, there has to be a reason, and that has not been disclosed to humanity as a whole. Certain groups may know why they're doing it, but us as a whole do not. And the potential may be that the sun is going through a change, and that we have to have some of these particles up there to inhibit the ultraviolet radiation from reaching or impacting young plants, young animals. I mean, if you wanted to look at this as a potential positive, then that may be it. But then there's all of the fallout, the chemical fallout from it. So I don't know. We're looking for other people to come out, like the whistleblowers. Kristen Megan, who was an environmental specialist, who is now talking about seeing the parade of products showing up on bases. And in the meteorology side, there's not a lot of other people that are doing this to the point I am talking about it. I've had communication with some who are in private forecasting, for ski resorts or water management or energy distribution kind of people, but not much in the TV side.
You mentioned Kristen Megan. I loved her approach because she was bringing it from a kind of eyes and ears on the ground approach. But she also mentioned, because she was an environmental scientist, that she was able to test the background soil, or I should say test the soil currently, and then check it to the background soil that was on record in the counties that went back many, many years. And each person in each individual county can do that on their own. They could take a soil sample to their county and have it tested to see what type of elevated aluminum, barium, strontium, or whatever else is in there, and get proof positive for themselves. I think that was an important thing when I heard an interview from her.
Yeah, I hadn't thought that that these county extension offices would keep those kind of samples as a historical record, and that's brilliant. That's brilliant to have that baseline that you can go back to the maybe 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and do these samples. And see if you can see this. The other way to do that is to bore tree ring holes
Mm.
And then you can sample year by year by year.
Oh,
Because those particulates will be sequestered in that layer of tree ring growth.
yeah, that's amazing. One of the things that I find when I talk to people about geoengineering is, well, if it's happening, what can we do about it? Because it's way up there and it's by these people that are out of our reach. I can't affect it. So that brings it back down to a human level, at least in one respect, to get some power back, into the people's hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
But you're right. There is a feeling because it is disconnected, and there is only one authority that deals with aviation issues in our country, and that's the FAA. States really don't have any rights in that regard. It's the airspace is all federal, and if you can control what's happening at the federal level, then you're pretty much free and clear to do what you'd like to do up there.
So Scott, I know you mentioned earlier that that we don't really know what all the reasons are for geoengineering to be occurring, but you have some theories on what you think. Do you not?
Well, I do. And like you just said, there are so many layers to this. To be able to point out to one plane and one trail and say it is doing this and this or just this is kind of difficult to do. What I was able to do is essentially put cameras in the sky and note that these planes are flying in patterns, and that as a trail is laid out, the behavior of the trail that is being laid down is exceedingly important to the weather makers. How long that trail lasts, how that trail changes shapes or deforms is revealing the wind patterns in the sky, temperature differences, whether aspects of the atmosphere, segments of the atmosphere are ascending or descending or moving laterally, meaning grinding against each other. And drawing these straight line trails across these different energetic zones in the atmosphere reveals the behavior of the many layers of the atmosphere. So you could have a constellation of satellites in space that can see the different, let's just say, components of the trails. How you could have a chemical mixture at say 25,000+ feet, a different mixture at sub 25,000 feet, a different mixture sub say 18,000 feet, and so forth. So you could keep track on how all of these different layers of the atmosphere are shearing against each other. And so that plays very, very well into the concept that they're using this to figure out what the weather is doing, days, if not weeks ahead of time. And if they're capable of adding ionization, adding heat, adding resonance, then that input can also be determined or quantified by the trails as having an impact on the atmosphere at the time. So it's a little complicated, but honestly, it's elegantly simple at the same time.
I don't know what you know about our conference and our organization as a whole, but we're really trying to help usher in a lot of the changes happening in the world, not only in the area of various activism groups such as the geoengineering movement, but also like some of our presenters are like Michael Tellinger, who is speaking about ancient civilizations, and we have Carrie Cassidy, who is going to be talking about extraterrestrials and so on. So we have a very open-minded perspective on a lot of things. And so now I understand the weather modification aspect of it. And actually, let me talk about that for a moment before we get sidetracked. In our conversation with Michael Murphy, I think a month ago, I believe he mentioned that you had made a comment about, was it Hurricane Sandy, and how there were chemtrails being sprayed, and you thought that it was actually causing the hurricane to steer toward New York. Is that correct?
Well, what I noticed about 8 days before Sandy made landfall was that the impulse that would capture Sandy was being engineered, sprayed, gridded over while it was leaving Siberia. And then I kind of looked back over the forecast maps and saw that this minor wave, which was west of the Aleutians at the time, was going to be a key player in carving out a large enough trough and bottoming out this trough, say over North Florida in the Carolinas, to essentially outrace Sandy off the East Coast and force Sandy to kind of curl back in. To what end is speculation. But what they were doing to that storm would make sure that Sandy did make landfall. Otherwise, Sandy would have gone out into the North Atlantic and not been a $65 billion storm. So why the why is what's kind of left open to someone else.
Right. Okay. And do you find have you noticed that in other instances where storms seem like they're being steered in a particular direction, or was that then an isolated case?
Almost every event we see the trails on top of, ahead of, or immediately behind. So what they're creating with the trails is a situational awareness of what the weather is doing over continents or a global scale. And so I don't think there's a single weather event that they're not cognizant of, whether they're using this technology to kind of amp it up or step on it a little bit. You kind of have to wait until after the event happens to figure that one out. You see, if the event was forecasted to bring a foot of snow and it only brought 2 or 3 inches, then you have to consider that something went wrong.
So they can use the same technology to reverse or even break up storm activity as much as they can to increase the intensity of it.
Create or destroy. It's all about either destructive resonance patterns or constructive resonance patterns. And then you use the trails to align the patterns as they come together over a certain region. And so you've got to have all those lines, all those angles have got to be just right to either disrupt a storm from coming together or to enhance its development. Both work.
So does it make sense to think then that a lot of the more destructive storms we've had could have been prevented, or quite possibly they were engineered?
I think it's all engineered, and there's a need to kind of keep the economy chugging along. And right now, insurance companies, insurance claims, it keeps building, it keeps reconstruction, it keeps an aspect of the construction economy going. It's not a very kind way to do it, but it's a way to keep an aspect of the economy moving along. And it's the same with, if you've got your handle on the weather and the prices of futures, from lumber to orange juice to oil, all of these things are determined in a large part on weather. How much you get at harvest, how much wheat comes in, how much corn comes in, how much corn was flooded out, how much corn was left in the field when the frost came early. All of these things play directly into weather.
In I believe it was one of your interviews, I remembered you saying that this technology could possibly be being utilized to track UFO activity in our upper atmosphere. Is that something that you think is true?
I think when you have technologies like this, there are many things that it can do that people haven't considered that they're capable of. If you've got antennas or essentially charged particles, in the atmosphere, it's essentially a layer of foil that something would have to punch through or go through or come in contact with to leave or enter the atmosphere of the planet. Man, I could see easily how some software could be written to give them that information about traffic across separate layers of the atmosphere that are laced with these trails materials. Yeah, I can see how that could be very easy to do.
You have kind of an interesting background, and which is curious to me, because you're a meteorologist, and of course you've become involved in this geoengineering movement, and then of course you are involved in Blue Water Alchemy, which produces, I believe, just Ormus products, correct?
Correct.
And I don't know if I was at the very first Ormus conference some years back. Were you there?
No, I was not.
Okay, yeah, it's been ongoing, I think, but I attended the first one. It's been a number of years now, and so I'm familiar with the Ormus community and a lot of the alchemists. And we do have one of the prominent members of the community who was going to be speaking at our event. And I only found out about you guys after we started talking to Michael J. Murphy, so I didn't even realize you were involved in this movie and in that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious about how does a meteorologist who gets involved in geoengineering end up manufacturing Ormus?
I guess it was just meant to be. No, I had some coincidences and met some people, and I met Don Gifford, who is the creator of Blue Water Alchemy, and just had some talks. And I had my geoengineering, but all I'm doing is presenting an issue to the public, and I needed an aspect of a solution. And people like, what do I do once I'm breathing this stuff? And so the Ormus can come in as an aspect of detoxing and helping the plants and agricultural deal with with the toxins that are coming out of the skies. We fertilize our gardens and our farmlands with petroleum extracts, and there's better ways to do these things to move us into another age. And so it was just kind of meant to be that I was to meet Don, and we were to kind of join forces and come up with Blue Water Alchemy, and it's his mission to take it as far as it can be on this planet, with the health of the world the way it is, physically and emotionally in a way. This is something that's necessary. This is something that's needed in this day and age right now.
So have you found some sort of evidence that supports that Ormus can be used to detox chemtrails?
It'll detox what's there, and if you're concerned about chemtrail issues, then the Ormus will do what it can in that regard. What it's very good at is just enabling effective, accurate communication within the body structure itself, and then with the creation of the daily replication of cells. As adult men, we have about 100 trillion cells, and we wake up each day needing to replace or clone about 300 billion of them. And if we can get that cloning process, that replication process down accurately and correctly, then as a race of beings or as individuals, we can go a great distance into having healthier lives as we age. We can be so much healthier. And we because we've had a history with Ormus, there's things we can talk about, and there's things that because First Amendment rights are a little abridged right now, we cannot. So, but if people are interested, the Ormus is out there, and it doesn't matter whether they get it from us at Blue Water Alchemy or elsewhere. It's good. It's just good for people to consume.
We've tested we've tested a number of different Ormus products from different providers, and they're all over the board. Some are exceptionally great, and some of them are not good at all, and some of them have more of an adverse effect. And I think one of the factors that has to be taken into consideration is the consciousness level of the person who is making the Ormus, because unavoidably that's going to in some way imprint on the product that's being made, not to mention the vibrational influences of the environment, the planetary influences, and so on.
It can't help but, can it? It can't help but.
Yeah.
I mean, be an important part of that as the alchemist. It's the Y factor, the U factor. That's huge.
Right, and so yours actually did produce exceptionally good results compared to a lot of the other ones. So it is one of the ones that we found was that worked better than most of them, and so we're definitely interested in finding out more about your product and so on, and maybe we can even have you guys out at a future expo to talk about that subject.
Absolutely, would love to do that. We just did the Tesla conference, the Tesla Tech conference down in Albuquerque. And it's just fun to kind of get together with like-minded people. And it's amazing when you get into those kind of groups, how many folks have had near-death experiences. And it changes their outlook on life. And it's just a joy to be around that kind of person.
Well, just sort of off topic, you mentioned the Tesla conference. We've got several different branches of our organization that are working in different fields, and one is the area of technology, and we are planning a live web stream demonstration of some Tesla technology in a couple of, probably in the next few months, which should be interesting. I don't think anything like it's been done on a demonstration globally before. Mm-hmm. So it's something to keep an eye out for. But we're planning to transmit energy across the country to here in Michigan and light up a room with lights. So
I want to see that one.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Keep in touch with us and Michelle and so on. We'd love it if you could, because we've built this global network of different organizations to where we have access to millions of people instantaneously if we want to, and so we're counting on everybody to get this in front of as many faces as we can, so that we can open people's minds, and once this is out in the open, it's going to be easier to move forward and bring more of these technologies to the world. And so that's coming up in the next few months. We still have to set up some of the finalize it and do some tests first to make sure it works okay before we actually broadcast it live. Yeah, so that should be fun. I'm curious about your thoughts about where you think, since you're involved not only in the activism and various other things going on behind the scenes in the world, but also you're obviously clearly a very conscious person. I'm curious about what do you think that as a world we've turned the corner in terms of a lot of people believe that there's no hope. Now, I'm not one of those people. I see a lot of great things happening. But I'm curious, do you think that we're headed in the right direction as a world consciousness, or have we crossed the point of no return in that direction, or are there still obstacles to cross that make?
I think there's absolutely still obstacles to cross, but I think we're close. We don't have enough people that are yet disgusted with the way things are, and that's the big hurdle. We've got to get people across that. We've got to get them not so focused on what is wrong with the world, but excited about what they can create out of this world. And that's the transition that I haven't seen yet happen. Although last weekend, in talking with some quote unquote movers and shakers, the big boys, the powers that be, the elite, do know that their run with this financial system is ending. That is happening now. And so what I've been able to work through or come into the information of is that a secondary monetary system is being put together now. And that is going to be a much kinder one for most people. And that there's aspects of the vast sums of money in the shadow banking system that will be introduced into this system. And that will allow alternative technologies, whether they be energy or modalities for healing, or even just understandings about who we are as a race and where we've come from, will not be off limits. That'll not be banned or sequestered information. And so I have great hope that not in a twinkling of an eye things will change, but it'll be a change that we work for, and because we will have worked for it, we will have earned it. Because most of what people want is just to wake up one day and the whole world has changed without a whole lot of work or any work being put into it. And that's not going to happen. That's not how karma works. And so we're not over the hump yet. I still think if we were to deal with some big global terrorism, that our involvement as a species is still at risk. And so if we end up with like a nuclear event, then I'm seriously concerned. But if we can avoid those pitfalls, and I know there's white hats, and I know there's good guys at very high levels, working for our betterment. If we could trust them and just kind of give them what they need and do the work that we can do, then maybe the corner has been crossed. But we're close, guys, and I am excited.
Do you have an idea of time frame as far as when do you think this is going to all happen? The new monetary system and so on?
I think in 12 months.
Oh, really? That's
within 12 months. It may be 12 weeks, guys. Yeah, so many things are imminent. You don't close vast, numbers of consulates and embassies, on a weekend without a reason. So if we can avoid a nuclear incident, I don't want to say we're home free, but we're much, much closer.
Well, I've been hearing that there are some significant things about to take place this September in government, in the Vatican, and so on, and the whole banking system and such. So I don't know exactly what. They haven't announced what, but there's something coming down the line. What do you think about extraterrestrials and their influence in all these changes and the world consciousness and so on? Do you have any evidence or any even intuitive feeling as to whether they're helping us in some way or another, or what their involvement is?
I think they're helping and hurting us. I think there isn't just one group of ETs. I think there are numerous groups of ETs, and all with varying levels of light and agenda that's either the betterment for mankind, or probably some that would just as soon wipe us off the planet so they could have Earth. So I think there's this whole variety and a whole different range of agendas about what the ETs would want for Earth. And there's definitely that aspect that don't want us here at all. And then there's those that, helped create us and are nurturing our progress. And so I think that's part of why NSA and security and all these other things have been kept from mainstream media, is because it is very tense behind the scenes, very tense. So if we just keep the dark ones from creating this massive agenda of fear and reverting us into a totalitarian regime, then I think we've got a very, very bright future. But I still think there's that small risk that we slip into a dark spell. We're not free of that yet. We are not evolved enough to move through the fear programming that has been saturating us for decades, if not centuries. So we're close, but we're not over that just yet. There's a lot of humanity that is not that evolved.
Well, I want to jump back to geoengineering for a moment. What do you think is the main obstacle to moving forward to getting this issue resolved?
Resistance from those that don't want it exposed. That's the big issue. It still serves them to have this quiet. The best weapon is a secret weapon, and right now this is a secret weapon. And when it serves their agenda to have it out in the open, then it'll be out in the open. They'll disclose it, but they're not ready for that just yet. So I don't think that we're on a fast track for disclosure. The other side of this is, unless we get another whistleblower, which I think is a very real possibility, or enough information comes out that we have a contractor that leaks information, and that would be an airline. I would not be surprised to see an airline say, yeah, you caught us, that was our plane, and that's what this gear is that you've all photographed. I think that's possible, that we could have some breaking of the ranks. And some of those airlines that are forced to participate in this just so they can stay in business, might want to say, hey, it really isn't us. This wasn't our choice to do this. They want to clear the air. I don't think that'll happen in the States. I think that would be a European disclosure. Something would happen over there first.
We have this other little project that we're working on in our organization. We try to approach activism from more of a positive, proactive way, rather than just getting angry and wanting to blow planes out of the sky. And which in the geoengineering movement, that's pretty common emotional reaction.
we can have those thoughts, we just can't act on them.
Yes. So we're actually working on a music video featuring children and a teenage band and younger kids doing voices, essentially because from our vantage point, most people we come across don't even know that there is anything going on. They don't realize there's a difference between chemtrails and contrails.
They don't.
And so we are trying to create something that has more of a positive message and really makes people take a look at this as an issue, and that's something that's going to affect their children and their children's children in the future. And hopefully will attract more of a soft approach to attracting more people into the conversation, and then they can watch the documentaries and learn more and so on. So that's something that we're also planning to launch in the next few months, which hopefully will help, in the move forward in that area.
Yeah, Scott, I want to approach this topic. I've been dying to ask you. So I had an opportunity recently to watch the sci-fi Joe Rogan Questions Everything special, and in this special, I first of all have to give credit to Joe Rogan for putting his neck out and putting his name on something this controversial and possibly career ending for maybe some people. So hats off to him. He was able to interview the Christian Megan, Michael J. Murphy. You were on there, Nick Begich, and I would say the three of us may not agree with his conclusion, and we're free to do that. I think we might want to talk about it more, but I wanted to possibly ask you if you had anything else that you wanted to add, or if you wish they would have kept something in there that maybe that ended up on the editing room floor.
Well, there's a lot of comments on that piece, to be honest with you, because there were several instances where they used incorrect video with generated sounds that were generated in the studio. They were not recorded out in the field. Mm-hmm. And what was claimed as home video from the gal who, I'm sorry, there was some serious ethical gaps in the creation of that episode. And as much as we like that they took on the topic to essentially build everyone up, have them present their evidence or their case, and then come in with a chainsaw and cut their legs off for the last 45 seconds of each one, I thought was a little disrespectful.
Sure.
And they did that with every single one, every single person. And so I think it was A. Smith and Company was a production house that did that. And if that was the intention from the beginning, then they misrepresented themselves from the first phone call to me to the last. And Joe, I don't have anything really good to say about it. I really don't.
Fair enough.
Because that was misrepresentation and just outright lying on several issues. And so I've got the show recorded, and at some point I'll play it and do a voiceover over those instances which were lies, outright lies. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But that's the risk of going with mainstream. They may bring up the topic, they may want to approach it honorably, but once it gets through editing, even the story editor may not be able to save, what was intended in the beginning, and that's what I haven't figured out with. So I've got somebody from inside that's written me, and so I'll have a phone conversation with him the next day or so, and we'll see what really happened.
Yeah,
but that's the risk of taking an important topic like this to the mainstream.
Yes, and it takes for you and for Joe, it takes a lot of bravery to even approach that, knowing that this probably will happen. So I commend you for that, and I wanted to just approach that topic. So thanks for giving your thoughts.
Yeah, and honestly too, I had to do it. I had to say.
So you mentioned earlier that you carried the geoengineering ball for 10 years. What's next for Scott Stevens?
You got to see this puppy through.
Yeah,
this has got to be done. There's just too much into this. The awareness. We can go back to the bread analogy. It's risen. And the loaf is in the oven. So I think we're very close to getting this done. Very close. And I think another whistleblower or two will really help. But there's so many other film makers, documentary makers that are kind of broaching this topic that I think we're within 2 or 3 years of having awareness done if we don't get disclosure first. And all that would take is an airline saying, over here, we're doing this. We don't feel good about it. It's wrong, but we're doing this. And then all the others have to say, like the NSA, us too. We don't want to, but us too.
And anybody that's listening out there that works for an airline or knows someone, this is your opportunity.
You've had many.
Yeah, I challenge you. Well, the one thing I'd like to also commend you on, I've followed you for a while. I'm a huge fan. I love how you've broken out of the one-dimensional message, so to speak. You came on the scene obviously as a weatherman, and you spoke out because of your integrity and bravery. You spoke out and the geoengineering. And now you're branching off into consciousness. You're branching off into with Don Gifford with the Water Alchemy, and you're doing the expos. And I love how that. I see a lot of people starting to break out of that, kind of to show that people aren't a one-dimensional message. We're very multifaceted, and we are very powerful when we really step into our own truth.
Yep. And that's just what everybody needs to find is we have these things that we'd like to see changed in the world. There's activism, but there still has to be other solutions. There has to be something else that you can contribute rather than just the Paul Revere effect.
Yeah.
Where you're shouting at the top of your lungs, there's got to be something else. And so that's the beauty of the Ormus and Blue Water Alchemy.
Yeah, I think on that topic, I listened to Don Gifford on Carrie Cassidy's Whistleblower Radio, and I want to direct all our viewers and listeners to go to this. It's on YouTube. It only has a couple thousand views. It should have 100,000, but it's his entire story, his near-death experience. everything. It's amazing, and it gives you a really great idea of what if people start to listen to their heart, start to listen to their true calling, what can be accomplished, and what one of the reasons, or what it looks like, I should say.
Yeah, I think that date on that was about September 18th of 2012.
Yes,
on Terry Cassidy, something like that.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. Well, when you're talking about people not having enough and speaking out, finally, there's a Ben Harper lyric that it came to mind, and it says, "I've seen enough to know that I've seen too much." And I think that's where, a lot of people are there, but I think that's where humanity has to go. Where they see enough to know that, okay, this is too much. It's time to step up and really work with this. And I'm glad you're out front, and you've laid the groundwork and made it easy for people to step up and do that. Yeah. So thank you.
And like we talked about a little bit earlier, it only takes the point of a needle, the point of the spear, to pop the balloon, to pop the illusion, and then it can't be put back together. and that's where we're headed. Is this reality has been distorted in such a misshapen, bizarre shape that it can't stay this contorted for long. Some spear of truth, something will come along and break it. And we've got to be ready to pick that up on the other side. And this is why we can't focus on the chaos here. We've got to begin to envision our supportive communities, our sustainable communities, our own self-governance. These are kind of things that we need to be, filling our consciousness with, not the anger about what's going on up overhead or on the TV.
Right.
We could do that.
I follow one last question. On a side note, you mentioned the financial system and the new financial system. I follow the financial system quite a bit. I don't talk about it much, but do you care to comment on what possibly a new financial system might look like in the future?
There's the one that I think that my choice of a financial system is not one at all. Mm-hmm. That would be the ideal choice, where we don't have a centralized system, and that everything we do on a much, much closer to home scale. So we don't need to have a dollar, but I think temporarily they're going to have to populate the primary money system with the shadow banking. And what I learned last weekend is that there are these trillions and quadrillion dollars worth of bonds sitting on the other side of the Iron Curtain, if you will. And that as that money comes in, an aspect of it will be taxed. Yep. And it'll be that tax that goes to reliquify this monetary system and pay off debts. So we'll see how people can be, the powers that be, and they end up kicking and screaming, or they just, end up with their heads chopped off and we start fresh. Who knows? Who knows? but there's going to be some change.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned the heads chopped off. Max Kaiser actually talks a lot about that. He's actually been sounding the trumpet for that to happen. Second French Revolution.
That may really need to be what happens, and I don't think until we cross the corner, until that happens, until that imagery is seen. Yeah, and then we know we're free. Then we know that we can get on to the next phase of this evolution. But that is going to be a call that's going to be hard to put out. People are going to want that kind of justice. They're going to want that kind of revenge. That's just where they are. That's the imagery that TV has been feeding them for years now. So that's what they're going to want to do.
Do you see perhaps a decentralized local community barter system popping up?
I think we'll see what we'll term self-organizing collectives.
Yeah.
And if that's on a neighborhood basis or a small city or a small state basis, I think that's what's going to happen. Nation states will be smaller, and I trust we won't have the standing armies to deal with anymore. That we'll be dealing in a much more healthy environment on so many levels, healthier environment.
And it's already popping up in a little. We have a presenter that's coming. Her name's Foley Raw Christina, and she started a co-op in Houston, Texas, and it's now a 100,000 person raw food co-op, and that's a perfect example of it. It went from, to quote her, it went from 10 people in her living room to 100,000 people that are using local food in a sustainable economy like that don't need outside influence or corporate influences, and it's beautiful to see that. And her goal is actually to have that in every city. So when you get off a plane, again to quote her, that you can go to find a local community and go right to that barter community for the local co-op food in the area.
Yeah. Yep. That's how it needs to be. We don't need to be shipping apples from China. That's utterly insane.
Yeah.
Insane, especially when we have Washington, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, Colorado apples. We've got the food here. We don't need to be, it's insane.
Yeah.
You know, so it would almost be a good thing to have some kind of earth changes and kind of close these ports so we can direct our focus of needs satisfying and sourcing our needs from inside this country or inside locally. And it really feels like we're going to have to go through a crisis before we're forced to face that inevitability.
Yeah.
And so preparation now,
yeah,
is always good.
There's I'll leave with this. There's a man I listened to. His name is Richard Allen Miller. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he was he worked with Nick Begich, and they did a lot of stuff on consciousness work. And he coined something, or I'm not sure if he coined it, but he uses the word a lot, alternative agriculture. And his definition of that is having your local community, everyone grows their own crop, and it becomes almost a competition. So he said, instead of having soccer moms and competing with their children, he said, I would like to see communities compete to see who grows the best tomato in the area. And that way there would be an incentive for people to grow it as a sport. I thought that was a great outlook.
I mean, why not? Why not? You know, locally grown food is so much better, especially if you can, as we talked about earlier, adding in these elements. Add the Ormus.
Absolutely.
You actually get yummy tasting little tiny tomatoes there on the salad bar. They don't have this empty, nasty taste. They actually taste good. They're yummy. The food's good.
Yeah. So, well, we'll leave with that. We went from geoengineering to growing your own New Age victory garden.
You know it, because that's what it's going to. That's where it's taken us.
Yes. Well,
if that's the reason for all the chemtrails in the sky is to get us onto this next expression of a paradigm, then well, it was all for the better then.
There you go. Well, I'd thank you for your time, and I'm really looking forward to Ethann and I are really looking forward to talking to you again. I'm sure we will cross paths very soon, whether it's you or you and Don, and who knows in what context.
He'd love to talk.
All right. Well, thank you, and have a good day.